Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Here's a video to go along with today's lesson, and today is the last time that we are going to be working on our Brickout game here. So today we're going to be adding a sprite, so showing how to add picture files into the game by turning our ball into Doge. We're going to have sound effects to see how that works. I'll also show you how to do music. It's almost the same thing. Also, we're going to fix that bug for having the ball get stuck inside the paddle. And finally, we're going to add a pause button. So those are 4 things that we're going to be doing today. But before we get started on that, I just wanted to point out a couple things right here. So, I was asked how do you create an input box in Pygame, and since there's no nice, easy way to do it, I made a video here on how to do that. So this is going to be a very bare bones sort of program. Only thing it has is the input box, but if you're curious on how to do that, you can look at it here. Also, before we get started, above that, I have made a list or links to all these different files that you're going to need to go along with today's lesson. So if you haven't downloaded these things, you should do so now. So right click and then save image as. These ones right click and then save link as. And you need to make sure that all these files go into the same folder as your program. Okay? Because if we don't have the file in the same folder as the program, then we need to give the entire path location rather than just being able to give the file name. So make sure you have these. If you have those all downloaded and put into the folder the same as the Brickout game, then you are ready to get started. So let's do that. So first thing I want to do, how about we fix that bug so that we don't get the ball stuck inside of the paddle anymore. The reason why that was happening is because if the ball collides with the paddle and the next frame it's still colliding with the paddle, it would then collide again. And that is the reason why it kept on giving us this weird behavior, is because it had multiple collisions happening all at the same time. So the way that we're going to fix that is we're going to put sort of a cooldown timer, making it so that the ball and the paddle cannot actually interact with each other if they've interacted again recently. So we're going to make it so it has to wait basically a tenth of a second before it can bounce again. And that tenth of a second, the ball will have enough time that it's gone somewhere, and so we don't have to worry about it anymore. So, to do that, we need to go to our game class, way up here, way up the top, right here, and we're going to create a new variable. And I'm going to call it last bounce. And I'm just going to set it to some big number, 1,000. We need it to be reasonably big. Actually, you could probably set it to 0, and honestly, it would probably still work. But set it to 1,000. And this is going to be measuring in milliseconds how long has it been since the ball has bounced off of the paddle. So 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. 1 second is plenty of time. So that will mean that it will be able to bounce off of it again. But if it's been less than 100 milliseconds, then we're not going to allow them to interact with each other. So this is going to be the variable that does that. And then down here in our update function, we are going to modify this. So not only are we checking to see whether or not the paddle and the ball are colliding with each other, we're also going to check whether or not enough time has passed since the last time that they bounced off each other that it can do it again. To do that, we're going to and we're going to check if self.lastBounce is greater than 100. So if it's been at least 100 milliseconds since the last time it bounced off the paddle, then we will allow it to bounce off it again. So, in that case, we will bounce, but we are also going to set self.lastBounce back to 0 because, well, it's just bounced off of it, so no time has elapsed since last time it's bounced. Else, so otherwise, we're going to add dt, which is how much time has elapsed since the last frame, to last bounce. So self.lastBounce plus equals dt. And so that's going to increase, just tell us how much more time has passed since the last time. And that is going to be how we keep track of how long it's been. So if it bounces, set it to 0 and do the bounce. Otherwise, add how much time has elapsed since the last frame to the last bounce. And that should be everything that we need so that we no longer have the bug. So let's try it out, see if it works. And usually it happens if I did get it there. Whoopsies. So, doesn't work 100%, but it does seem to be working pretty well. I kind of forced it in there by cramming it between the wall and I think I might need to make it a little bit longer. I think so. Maybe we'll do 200 milliseconds. 200. That should maybe help that issue. If we squish it up against the wall, it's still going to give us some weird behavior because it's interacting both with the wall and the paddle. Come on down. Wow, this is going to take a while. Ah! Okay, missed it. But otherwise, yeah. So if I force myself into it, try to make it so it stays colliding, it doesn't seem to want to. So I think that fixes that issue. Not 100%, it's kind of a janky way to fix it, but it's the best way to fix it without having to get things more complicated. Or a lot more complicated. Still a little bit more complicated. Alright, so that's that. Next, let's add a sprite. So we're going to turn the ball into Doge. So where's our ball class? Right here. So we need to add only 2 lines of code in order to make this work. We need 1 line of code in our constructor function in order to load the picture from the picture file, and a second to change our draw function so it draws the picture rather than a circle. And those are the only 2 things that we actually need to do. So I'm going to do self.image. So what is the image of the ball? And the self.image is going to be image dot, let me just make sure I'm getting this exactly right. Yeah, there it is. Image dot load, and we need to load Doge dot, this is a PNG file. So PNG files are really good for a lot of this stuff because they are vector graphics, and vector graphics are very easy to resize without losing information or getting artifacts. Other raster type files like JPEGs and bitmaps, they are tougher to resize without, getting distortion or whatnot. But you can do those as well. Like if you have a JPEG or a bitmap, you can put those files in there as well. But PNG files are typically the best for this kind of thing. So that loads the file, but we need to do something else. We are also going to want to convert it. So there is 2 different ways to convert it. There is convert, pretty simple. What that does is it converts the image file into a form that's going to be easier for Pygame to work with, and that will help improve performance. But that's not going to be the one that we use. We're going to actually use convert alpha, so that it also gets what's called the alpha information from the image. And more specifically, what that means to us is it's going to get the information about what parts of the image are transparent. If we don't do that, then it's going to assume that none of the image is transparent, and so we will get some sort of background color that goes along with the image, not the background color of the game itself. So that is why we're going to do convert alpha, in order to get that transparency that's in our picture file here. So that is the first line of code, is loading the image and then converting it so it's faster to use, as well as preserving the transparency. Then down here, we can just actually comment that out, and instead, what we're going to do is not a draw function. Instead, we're going to do blit. And think of blit as kind of like pasting. We've done blit before, down, or maybe up, in our status bar. So the status bar, we also blitted. And basically what it does is it took the surface of our status bar and pasted it onto our window. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take the image of Doge and we're going to paste it onto our window. And that's what blit basically does. It's like a paste. So we're going to do self.window, and we're going to blit. And what are we going to blit? We need to give first what is the thing we're blitting. The thing that we're blitting is self.image. And the second thing is where do we want to put it. And we have two options. We can either give it a tuple that has the X and Y position for the top left hand corner of that picture. So just like all of the rectangular objects that we've been dealing with, the position is exactly the same. It's of the top left corner. But we can also actually just give it the collision box rectangle that we have down here, and it will use that instead. So self.rect, and that will tell it where do we want to put our image. One thing that you're going to want to be aware of is that when you're working with pictures inside of Pygame, you can't resize them inside of Pygame. You need to do the resizing elsewhere. For example, this I resized so that it was going to be the same size as our ball. Originally the picture was much bigger, and I used just Paint 3D for it. So anything that's basic image program or drawing program that allows you to resize stuff would be perfectly fine. And just make sure that you size it to the right pixel size. So, that does that. This does the draw. So let's run this thing and let's see our Doge boy bouncing around. Look at that. It's no longer Brickout, it's now Doge out. Beauty. So, stop that. And now we got two more things to do. Pause button and sound effects. Let's do pause button first. So pause button is not going to be done in any of these parts. Instead, it's going to be down here at the very bottom in our main driver code. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new variable that I'm going to call paused. And we're going to set it to false. So pause is going to be a boolean. It's either going to be true or false. Are we paused? And that is its job. The next thing we need to do is we need a way to toggle it. And the way I want to do it is so that we're going to make the space bar our pause button. Hit space, it'll pause. Hit space again, it will unpause. So, we need to use this event part of our code, which we've only have to use for quitting the game. Now we're actually going to use it to get some keyboard input. So the reason why we're doing it like this rather than like here is because this method of getting keyboard input is really good if you want to get if it's being held down or not. This is really good for that. But this method is better for when it's being first pushed down or if it's being lifted up. So stuff that you want to just happen once when they push down, you'd want to have here. But if you want to have something continue to happen while they're holding the key, this is the better way to do it. So that's why we're doing it in a different way. We did it this way because we want to be able to hold left or right. That wouldn't work if we did it this way. Here, we just want to push it. We don't want it to toggle between paused and unpaused if we hold the spacebar down too long. So, we need another if statement. We're going to say event.type. First, we need to know what type of event this is, and we want to know if it is a key down event. And this basically means, okay, is this event that we're looking at the player pushing a button on the keyboard? That's what that says. But that's not all that we care about. We also want to know whether or not it is the space bar. So we're going to say event.key equals the keyboard space. So if those two, so we can't just do this directly. The reason why is because not all events correspond to a keyboard key. So for example, what if the event was a mouse button click? Mouse buttons don't have a key, so this would give us an error. That's the reason why we're first checking, is this key being pushed down? And if we know that, then we can then check what key is being pushed. So if those two are true, if they push down the spacebar, then what we're going to do is we're just going to toggle the pause. So we're going to say paused equals not paused. And that will just toggle pause from true to false or vice versa. That now gets us something that we can toggle, but it doesn't do anything yet. It doesn't pause. The last thing that we need to do is right here, we need to do if the game is not paused, then and only then do we do these things. This will pause the game because it will stop the game from updating the positions of the different elements. This part, I suppose we didn't really need to put in here either, but we might as well. So that is how the pause is going to do. It's just going to stop the game from updating. It's still going to draw everything, but it won't update the positions of anything. So let's try it out. So there he goes, Doge Boy, and pause. Alright, looks good. Pushing left and right, nothing's moving. And unpause. Oh, there it goes. Pause. And unpause. Looking good. We now have a pause button. Beauty. So, last thing to do is to add sound effects. And there's a total of 3 sound effects that we're going to make. We're going to have it one sound effect for when the ball falls off the bottom of the screen, so the player lost the ball. And we're going to have 2 sound effects, one for when the ball bounces off the paddle, and another for when the ball hits a brick. So the first one we want to put inside of our ball class, because the point where we're checking to see whether the ball fell off the edge is right here inside of our ball class. So it makes sense to put the sound that goes along with this in our ball class as well. The other 2 are going to be inside of our game class, because that is where we're checking to see if the ball is colliding with anything. So, first thing we need to do, this is also going to be basically just 2 lines of code for each sound effect. First line of code is going to be to load the sound effect file, and the second one is to play it in the correct position in the code. So we're going to do self, I'm going to do SFX for sound effects, and this is going to be ball lost. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the mixer. This comes from Pygame, so that's where the mixer is coming from. Mixer is responsible for all the sound stuff. We're going to get a new sound. The sound is called And let me just make sure I'm getting it right. So, I think it's this one. Yeah, ball lost. And it is a wave file. So, ball lost dot wave. Just like that. This one I do find is a little bit loud. So maybe we'll change the volume. SFX dot ball lost, and we'll do set volume. And we'll set the volume to 30%. So if you put the volume at 1, that's max volume. Set the volume to 0, that's muted. And anything in between is a percent somewhere in there. So 0.3 is 30%. Now, so I guess this is turning into a 3-line part of our code. Now, down here, where we're checking to see whether the ball fell off the bottom of the screen, now we just play that sound effect. So self.soundEffects ball lost. Let's play that thing. Right there. I suppose there should be an O in lost, shouldn't there? So, let's try running this thing and see if we hear anything. And let it go. Oh, yep, I'm hearing stuff. I don't know if you guys are hearing stuff, but I'm hearing stuff. So there we go. Sound effect works. Now let's get the bouncing sound effects worked, and then we're going to be all done. So up, up, up in our game class, because this is where we're checking to see whether the ball is colliding with the paddle, and here is checking to see if the ball has collided with any bricks. That's going to be where we want to play the sound, and so that's why we're going to add the sound in our game class right here. So just like before, let's load up our sound effects. So SFX, this is going to be paddle hit, and so mixer dot sound, and it's going to be paddle underscore hit, or maybe it's hit paddle. I'm going to have to take a look. Got to make sure that you are referring to everything correctly, right? So let's take a quick look. Nope. Paddle hit. Beauty. Let's also load in the other one, so self sound effects, and this is brick. Oh. Brick hit, mixer sound, and let's get brick hit dot wave. And there we go. That loads them to both in. These ones are actually a little bit quieter, and they're also shorter, so it's not as disruptive. Not going to change the volumes of them. But then down here in our update, now we just need to play them in the proper place. So when the ball hits the paddle, we're going to do self sound effects and hit paddle. Is it hit paddle or paddle hit? It's paddle hit, isn't it? Paddle hit. And then let's play that sound effect right there. And then down here, where they're colliding with a brick, do self sound effects, brick hit, and let's play that sound effect right there. So, one more time to test it, run it, and let's see whether or not we got all our sound effects working. Oh. There it go. Wow. Come on down. I want to see if the paddle works. Almost. There we go. There we go. Look at that. So sound effects are working. Awesome. So there we go. That is everything that I wanted to do in today's class. So we saw how to fix the bug, or at least address the bug of the ball getting stuck inside the paddle. We saw how to add sprites by turning our ball into Doge. We saw how to pause a button, add a pause feature by using the events down here to check whether or not the spacebar gets pushed. And we've added sound effects. Pretty good. So that is everything that we're going to be doing with this game. We're not going to be coming back to this anymore. I know, sad. And since we only have a couple more weeks left, our remaining classes, of which I think we only have 6, are going to be, let's see, yeah. We have the 31st, the 2nd, the 7th, the 9th, the 14th, and the 16th. So we only have 6 classes left. Remember, so all those are going to be work periods / get help, except for maybe the 16th. We might do something fun then. I told you guys that I have that Minecraft map of downtown Calgary, so maybe we'll play some Minecraft. But the rest of them are going to be work periods. Remember that you need to have your proposal for your final project into me by the 6th. You need to have all your assignments, all your regular assignments in by the 11th. And the final project is due on the 16th. So we don't have a whole lot of time left. That's why we're going to be using our class times for work period / get help, because I know what kind of a crunch the end of the year can be. So anyways, that's all I have for you today. Have a good one, and I will see you all on Monday. Adios.